I promise you by the time these 45 minutes are over, you would have learned about identity, learned about purpose, and how to walk in discipline in your God-given purpose. Today we are living in a generation filled with ambition, opportunities, pressure, uncertainty, burnout, and constant transition. Many people are building careers, but silently, struggling with identity, emotional health, relationships, and purpose. We are privileged to host 3 incredible voices this morning, leaders who are making meaningful impact, both within the church and in broader professional spaces. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce my panelists for today. And I start with a gentleman, right? He's a passionate youth pastor, mentor, and leader dedicated to raising and empowering the next generation through faith, purpose, and authentic community. He currently serves as the youth pastor of CITAM Valley Road, where you know him for his fiery sermons, where he works closely with young people, guiding them in their spiritual growth, leadership development, and everyday life journeys. With a background in civil engineering, he brings a unique blend of structure, discipline, and practical insight into his ministry and leadership approach. His passion for young people is evident in the way he creates spaces for mentorship, meaningful conversations, and transformational growth among the youth. He is also a podcaster on CITAM Church Online podcast. Beyond ministry, he is a devoted husband, a father who deeply values family, faith, and intentional living. Through his work and personal example, Pastor Precious Cole continues to inspire young people to pursue purpose, build strong foundations, and live lives that reflect integrity and impact. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me warmly welcome Pastor Precious Cole Kamasi to my panel. The second panelist. She's first and foremost a born-again Christian, a wife, a mother. In addition to that, she is also a transformational leader, speaker, mentor, and advocate. Is passionate about empowering individuals, to thrive personally, professionally, and spiritually. She is the executive director and founder of Bold Nivel Limited, where she leads transformative coaching and training initiatives focused on leadership development, interpersonal excellence, emotional intelligence, communication, and personal branding. Through her work, she has equipped leaders, professionals, and organizations with practical skills that strengthen collaboration, inspire growth, and drive meaningful impact. She has recently been nominated in the Myogenic Excellent Music Awards, founded by Reverend Kathy Kuna, for her outstanding contribution through mentorship. She has authored one book, Becoming Before Belonging. Driven by a heart for transformation and a vision for lasting impact, she believes that empowered individuals build stronger families, healthier organizations, and thriving societies. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Pastor Hope Waiganjo to the panel. And they say we save the best for the last. All right? She is an HR consultant and a career coach, a champion of excellence at both individual and organization levels. See, she is passionate about empowering people in their gifting and aligning them to spaces that allow them to flourish. She is the founder of Jitume Inc., an empowering platform for job seekers and those seeking to grow in their career journeys. Complementarily, she holds a strong digital presence with good influence and reach on social media, where she shares her family, faith, and career lessons regularly. She currently serves as the pastor at CITAM, as a pastor at CITAM Kangundo Road, and specifically with children and youth ministries. She is passionate about providing transition care through mentorship, discipleship, and teaching as they navigate their way into the world. She has a degree in HR, a postgraduate degree in strategic management, a postgraduate certificate in lived theology and world Christianity, and is currently completing her MA in missions. She is a certified church planter, a TOT in church planting, and is currently in the process of collaboratively rolling out a series of trainings titled Next Gen Challenge to stir up millennials and Gen Zs in the area of ministry, alignment, and church planting. So ladies and gentlemen of CITAM Kangundo Road, CITAM at large, and the body of Christ, help me welcome Pastor Angie Obwaka to the panel. A round of applause for all my panelists once again. And because I don't have a lot of minutes, I really want to start with the foundation of it all right? And Pastor Precious Call, this goes out to you. First of all, I want to know, and I'm sure most of us want to know, why the name Pastor Precious Call? What was precious about the call, or was the call precious? And then, after that, you can tell us. A research was done actually, and they said 58% of young people ages 18 to 25 felt their lives lacked meaning of purpose in every previous month. Like in the previous month, most 58% said, their lives lacked meaning. I mean, we are a generation, if you're a reader and you go to bookshops, 50% or 60% of the books that we have in currently selling right now either deal with purpose and identity. I mean, you can make a career out of speaking about purpose and identity. Where have we gone wrong? Where have we gone wrong? And we are a generation where majority of us lack purpose and identity. Yet the materials are there, they are speakers. Where have we gone wrong? Pastor Precious Call.
Thank you so much, and good morning. It's good to be here and to see all of you. My name is not Pastor Precious Call. My name is Precious Call. And pastoral work is what I do. I'm born in a pastor's family. My dad was a pastor, was because he passed on. My mom still continues to pastor. I'm the firstborn. I have two little sisters who follow me. So when my parents got married, they were actively serving in ministry. And from the stories they tell me, they were serving as ushers at a Reinhard Bonke crusade in Eldoret, where I come from. and very newly married. And as they were trusting God for a child, apparently in that crusade, God spoke to them and he said to them that he'll give them a child who will have a precious calling. So when I was born, my father and my mother called me Precious Call. My dad used to tell me when she walked into the ward where I was born, it was a CS actually, at the Memorial Hospital in Eldoret, which is now the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. My dad had a small Gideon's Bible. You remember the blue one? It's the first thing I touched as a baby. And he did make a prayer that this will be your life. So I grew up along that journey as a pastor's kid, and everything I went through as a PK in a village town was enough to make me decide I will never follow this path. I'll never put my kids through what my parents put me through. And across different times of life, I would pause to take an oath and say, me and pastoral work, never. So I did so well in school. I went to KU to do civil engineering. And in the process of that journey, God's calling came looking for me. And the long short of it is, here I am today, doing the very thing I said I wouldn't do. And there's so much we can talk about purpose and how sometimes the society frames up into thinking what a successful life looks like, because a lot of that I didn't see in my parents, and it made me think how they lived their lives and the fact that they gave themselves to the calling and how that translated to the experiences we went through as a family. It framed my mind to think about what probably a successful life should look like, and I thought those experiences were too unfair and I didn't want my kids to go through the same. But we'll unpack that as we go. And as you rightfully asked the question of purpose, I think every one of us at whatever stage of life, we struggle with this one question: why am I here? And that's the question of purpose. And I know of a lot of young people who go to school and they study for careers which they get employed into, and 1 year down the line they are unsatisfied. Ask me about it and I will tell you, when I insisted my way and I didn't want to work in a church or to serve or be in calling, and I got a job with the International Committee of the Red Cross, and I was very fresh from campus. I was young, and I had an office with my name on it and a company car and lots of money. I was newly married. I like to joke about it. I was working for a Muindi guy who was the contractor of this particular project we were doing for the International Committee of the Red Cross. They were actually building the campus, which is in Kitusuru on the junction of Lower Kabete Road and Ngecha Road. And that's actually my way home. So every time I pass by there, I always remember. And I was there, and they used to pay me heavily because they thought I was such a resource, very young, fresh from college, great ideas. And you know, every Saturday I would go home with cash money. And you know, Muindi doesn't pay you sijui with banks. No, you're given your money. So there's no affordable housing, sijui taxes here, there. No, you take home your cash money. I'd go home and throw all this money on the table and tell Karen, say my name. And life was good. But I was there for a few months and it became so dissatisfying. I was not happy at all. I had the money, we had the means, but my heart never found true fulfillment. I was a member at CITAM Thikatown that time. So my job became so demanding that sometimes even Sundays became almost impossible to go to church, and that started feeling strange. And what I realized is that whenever I would go to church, Sundays became the only time I would find so much joy and fulfillment. A few times I would teach Sunday school, and those were such precious moments. I would be at work on a Tuesday, and I would be thinking about when am I going to meet these kids again so we can sing Father Abraham, so we can recite memory verses. And I started telling myself, I want to feel this on a daily basis. I want to have that Sunday feeling on a daily basis. What is it going to cost me? Probably my job. But you see, that's purpose crying within you because you're looking for meaning. You're looking for meaning in life. I forget who spoke and said, I hope young people can get all the money they want, all the travel experience they want, all the connections they want, so that they can know it actually counts for nothing. Because that was me. And so I made the decision to quit and go back. And this is the point I want to make even as we begin. I don't think we can find any true meaning in terms of our purpose anywhere else outside of God. And I'll say it this way. For example, when you go and buy a gadget, you buy a mobile phone or an iPad or whatever it is, along with it you'll be given a manual. And the manual is basically the mind of the manufacturer about that thing. And so the manufacturer will tell you, we've designed this thing to be able to have these capabilities. It can take photos, it can scan documents, it can record audios. And the manufacturer's manual gives you the possibilities, the realms, and what this thing can do. And so that's why anytime you buy a foreign object, you have to read the manual to know when to plug it, how to deal with it, It's the same of us. When God created us, He has the manual and the blueprint for our lives. And God understands us more than our teachers do. Because you have been taught with teachers or by teachers who placed limits on your potential. Some of you, maths teachers had the most to say about you, right? But here you are. Some of you, your parents have had the most to say about what you can or cannot do. But here you are. And the true definition of purpose, I don't think we can find it anywhere else in totality away from God. Because it is only God who says of Jeremiah, before I formed you, I knew you. And I set you apart in your mother's womb. If it was true of Jeremiah, it is true of you and I. God knows our limits. He knows our places. And as Acts 17:24 tells us, He knows the boundaries of our habitation and our times and seasons. And so the question of purpose will continue to be a critical issue. And the only place I think we can find it is in God.
A round of applause for Pastor Cole. Pastor Hope Oiganjo. Dwelling on the issue of identity. And I know you speak to youth a lot about relationships and all that, you know. I want to ask you a question. How bad is it for an individual, or how wrong is it for an individual to get into a relationship without a firm sense of identity? How bad is the situation as per your assessment? Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Is it? Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. And young people, I feel so much love for them because I remember I was there. And back then, I actually wished I had such an opportunity. Where I was, I don't think I had it. So to answer your question, identity ties, and I like how Pastor Precious has very well defined identity. Understanding who you are at the core. And it starts with our maker, you know. So if you get into a relationship, before you know that, first of all, you will be looking for that affirmation or that identity from somebody else or from the relationship itself. And that's where many people are today, whereby the culture, social media, and the environment has placed such a high pressure. Let me say there's so much pressure to relate, to be in a relationship, to get married. And so people don't think about what they need to do or who they need to be before they get into a relationship, because there is so much pressure to belong to somebody, to be called so-and-so's wife or so-and-so's husband. And so when you rush into such a relationship before knowing who you are, you will realize that the person that you think will give you an identity, they're also in a journey where they're also trying to find themselves. So you can imagine if they also don't know who they are, you will be two people in that relationship and confused. So identity is so important because, and I tie identity with purpose. Both of them you need to figure them out first before you get into a relationship. Also because for us believers, a relationship, and I will use a relationship marriage because I don't believe any of us is in a relationship for fun. If that's the case, end of Tuesday bowling. Because if you're in a relationship, it means it should be ending to marriage, yeah? So if you want to get into a relationship, the relationship for us as believers has to have a purpose. It should be a godly relationship that will fulfill a purpose that God will put in the two of you. And so if your purposes and your identities are colliding, then it means you're getting into this thing that you will both be in chaos. So figure out who you are first at the core, who you're called to be and what you're called to do, so that the two of you, your purposes, your values, your identities align. Just because you're born again doesn't mean that you're all going in the same direction. Doesn't mean that you have the same set of values and you believe the same thing as regards identity. So figure that out so that you don't cry. Many marriages are not failing because people are bad. They're failing because people discovered who they are when they're already married. And you realize this person, we are not going in the same direction. Our belief systems are off, or rather they're not aligning. And so we have marriages that should not have even happened, because people didn't know who they were. They were just seeking to be fulfilled, to be validated by this other person, and so they ended up in the wrong place. Yes.
A round of applause for Pastor Hope. Pastor Angie. A research was done, and they said 75 to 80% of businesses and relationships survive within the first year. When it comes to the fifth year, it's a 50% chance of surviving. I want to dwell on what Pastor Hope said on relationships, but also in the employment and business sphere of influence. They said they fail, these businesses and relationships fail because they start on the basis of motivation and not discipline. So second year, very good. But when it comes to the fifth year, when it comes to discipline, most don't pass that mark. Where do we draw the line between motivation and discipline in personal lives, relationships, workplaces, and the God-given visions? Where do we draw the line?
Wow, thank you for that question, Moses. Before I answer the question, if you didn't catch that line, please, you can write it down or you can tweet it. About if you're looking for a relationship for fun, go bowling. I will use that a lot. I like that. Go bowling. Don't compromise somebody else's future and destiny just because you want to have fun. Go and play a sport. Do something. I like that. And the pastor has said. He says pastor has said. But I like that question. I think a couple of things I would say. I think first and foremost, I don't think motivation is not a bad thing. There are many, I think it's a God-given drive, we would call it God-given drive to be able to do things. God has given us the ability, first and foremost, like the will to live. We have a desire, we start feeling hungry, then we have the desire to go and get food, or the push, however you'd be able to phrase it. So motivation is a good place to start. I think it is faulty if that motivation is all there is. So it's like it can be an external thing, which is like a hype. Everybody is starting this particular business, so you jump in. We see in the streets. One day you drive somewhere, only one person is selling thing X. And then within 2 weeks, there's like 5 vendors, 10 vendors. Now everybody's an expert. Somebody else even has a online platform to sell that particular thing. Not because they want to, or not because they themselves had that motivation, but they had FOMO pretty much. So it's not that it's not an internal drive that they have. But if you do have an internal drive to do something, that's a good place to start. Because sometimes it can just be an indicator that why is it that I am driven to some things and not the other? Why have I been wired that way by God, as we had talked about earlier? And so motivation can be a good starting point for you to ask the right questions about, okay, this is what I feel like I want to do. All right, now, if I want to build a church or start a business or do one thing or the other, what else will it take to be able to go the distance? And that's why you see people starting with, okay, this is the vision I have for my business or for the relationship or for whatever I'm getting into. But beyond now the vision, it's the mission. This is what I am going to do. And then, you look about like strategic management. Then you go to the goals. This is what I will accomplish. These are my objectives. So you work backwards in terms of how will I get to that? Because the motivation and the reality we all know as human beings is here today, gone tomorrow. I don't know, I think it was a pastor I once listened to, and he said, we're so quick to point fingers at other people, but nobody has disappointed you more than you have disappointed yourself. You're the one who makes a decision. You say, from tomorrow, 4:30 a.m., I'll be on this street running. Not the streets doing anything else, but like running, working out. Or I'll be waking up to do devotions. And you don't even tell anyone because you know you don't want anyone to call you out. You don't want anyone to ask you. But the next morning, you even just say, but God, you know my heart. Or maybe I'll start, Monday because it's a public holiday. Some of you have said June 1st. And then Monday is going to come and you're going to say it's Madaraka Day. If this is touching you, it's the Lord saying, don't make that excuse. But you need to have discipline to go the distance for anything. You need it for relationships. Otherwise, we'll be the kind of people who play around with other people's destiny, other people's lives, because sometimes we always just think about ourselves. Oh, this person is toxic, I'm going to leave this relationship, that relationship. But maybe you're the problem. You don't have a vision, you don't have direction, you don't have discipline, you don't have a sense of purpose, like we have spoken about. And so you're just bringing one girl after the other on this roller coaster of your motivation, your feelings, your this and the other. And the same thing even in the workplace. You have people nowadays who after about a year, I don't even, at a job by Bambi, everybody in your workplace is toxic. Everybody is this. But the reality is you don't have the discipline to build the skill and the muscle and the strength to go to the next level. Because at least, wrestle it out a bit. I think it's the words of Jesus where he says, nobody just starts a building without thinking and putting to place the foundations, counting the cost. An army leader doesn't go into battle without considering how much will it cost. Will I be able to beat this other army? If not, watch a tunikae before going. So, and then sometimes we over-spiritualize it. We make discipline a thing that some people have and others don't have. Yeah? I saw online the other day, it's not a commitment issue we have. It's that we're not committed to the right things. Anybody's committed. Don't just say some people are early morning people so they can wake up and read the Bible. Even you are committed to those series. You know how many seasons you've watched. You know when a new thing drops. This particular podcast, this particular show. You know if it's not even watching things, you know the gossip of the neighborhood. You're committed just to the wrong thing. So all of us can develop discipline. All of us can grow. We can build it. We just need to be able to attach value to the thing we say that it's important. Whether it's a relationship, a business, a career, whatever it is. Start with the motivation. Figure out where the motivation has come from. Put in the discipline and the work to go the distance.
I think this question still goes to, before I come to Pastor Precious' call, this question still goes to Pastor, and I'm glad I have three founders here. I have Pastor Angie, I have Pastor Hope, and I have Nyawira. So this question, maybe Nyawira will address it in the coming panel. But do you feel we are obsessed with the founder or relationship title, but not the work behind it? Like, I want my LinkedIn to have founder. I'm the founder. Founder and director. Or I want the relationship title, we are in a relationship, but not the work behind it. Do you feel we are obsessed with the title, but not the work?
What do you guys think? Imesemekana that yes, that is it. We are obsessed with titles, whether even beyond founder, we're obsessed with titles. It's no longer enough or cool enough for me to just say, hi, I'm Angie. I like what Pastor Precious, let me just say Precious said, because he said, my name is not Pastor Precious. My name is Precious, and I serve as a pastor. And the problem with these titles and chasing the titles, whether it's a founder or any other title we're looking for, is that when that thing is taken away, because the Bible says all these things will pass away. Whether you've planned, you've prepared, whether you know, you don't know, there'll be a day that it will not be there. Then what will you stand on? And I think the issues of identity and purpose then become most critical. That I am so sure and I am so secure in the fact that I am loved by God, that I am chosen, that I matter to God, that I am the best thing that God made in terms of Angie. There could never have been a better Angie. And you as Moses, you're Moses, and you're the best Moses, and you're the best Hope, the best Precious, and each of us individually. And being so secure in that I'm not chasing the title. There are people who I know who get deeply offended if you miss out one of their titles. That if you don't say Dr. So-and-so before then, hata anaweza toka hiyo mkutano yako. Or Minister so-and-so. Or if you introduce them, it could even be in a different sector. Maybe you're the head of this and this, but you're just invited, oh, let's have Moses come and...
Who is Moses?
Moses must be referring to somebody behind, not me, you know. And so there's that obsession. I think it's also because of the world we live in with social media. There's a lot of comparison. Before, you never even used to know what somebody was doing in another country, and it didn't bother you. Now you know. Even as we're sitting here, you know who has made. In fact, people are posting about how much money they have made, how many companies they have started. I was whispering here when I was hearing about author, so I just whispered to our wonderful MC here, what am I doing with my life? I have not even authored something. I even told him, let me just start taking notes. Now I can. That can be for the beginning. But just the pressure of, you know, other people are doing, other people are saying. But, you know, last thing I'll say to that. At the end, I once listened to somebody saying about this. I haven't really studied it. But, you know, at the end of time, where it says God will wipe away our tears, some of it will be because some of the things we have done in this life. You know, they say our works will be refined by fire. So you'll be presenting there was this book, there was this, there was this church I built. As it's going through the fire in Achomeka too, because it was not built on Nani. And those are the tears God will be wiping at the end. Because you'll be crying, 70 years, what? But I built, I did. It means nothing. All you have to show for yourself is just your life. You by yourself, you just made it. And so if we think about our lives from an eternal perspective, then it will be easier for us to not chase the titles and the things. In fact, it's even more costly because if, yes, God has called you to be head of this and you don't do it well, God will ask you about it. But if it was not something God called you to, then you will have wasted time and you will have losses to show. You will not have anything to present before God at the end of time. So yes, we are obsessed, but I pray that God will help us to better be content with where we are, with who we are in Him.
Pastor, okay, let me call you Precious Cole, since you said you, okay. I'm so glad this question goes out to you because you're wearing a Tommy Hilfiger somehow, somewhere. A lot of our identities in this generation comes from buying stuff, winning stuff, posting it on Instagram. And if we are not careful, we can it's good, yes, but we can tend to draw our identities from it. And I'm so glad you gave your story of when you were an engineer, and then I've heard that story twice actually, and I just want you to tell us, where do you draw the line? Yes, stuff is good, and we love, you know, when I see Pastor Angie drive a Range Rover, it's part of it's part of what Jesus said, shine your light to the world, right? But where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the boundary? Where do we stop so that these things do not become our identity? That when even God asks us of them, we can easily let go of them. Where do we draw the boundary?
Thank you for that question. As I think about that, I find that the issue of identity is the coming together of a few things. Our core values, the things that we stand for, we believe in, our belief systems, our strengths, our gifts, our talents. And when all these things marry together, they form who we are. And I think one of the biggest questions that we have to answer when we even go for interviews is usually that question, so who is Precious? And normally they'll tell us that how you answer that question is that you package yourself in a way that shows you are relevant for what you're applying for, right? So it means that answer will keep shifting based on what you're applying for. So how I answer that question in an engineering panel is difficult from how I told Bishop Callisto when I was being interviewed to be a pastor. I have to package myself in a way that makes me relevant for what. And you see, that's a problem already. Because then it means at different seasons of life, we keep morphing into something different to fit into certain spaces. And so the question I ask is, when we strip off what we do, when we strip off what we drive, what we wear, where we live, and all these questions, who is left? Because that's actually who we are. Even when we are thinking about conversations like what Pastor Hope is talking about, relationships, a lot of us would be drawn to these physical definitions of identity, an engineer, or a HR, or all those things. But we forget that's not what builds a home. When you go home, you don't have an engineer. You have this guy from Western who thinks this way. And so we have to peel off all these things and look at how all these things marry. And so who is Precious Call when we take off CITAM Valley Road Youth Church? When we take off designs and brands and labels, what are we left with? So it begins with the clarity of our values. So if, for instance, I define myself as a person of integrity. So whether I am a pastor, or I am an engineer, or I am a husband, or I'm a father, or I'm a football fan out there going to watch the Champions League, integrity cuts across. So we have to work it out inside out, away from what we are. How can we define ourselves in a way that is not pegged on anything physical that we do, which we can lose? I think the conversation around identity begins there. There's a lot, of course, that carries on to who we are based on what we do, such that we will always be identified by the titles that we carry. Yet again, it is temporary. That can be lost. So we have to go back and clarify what values. So if you ask me, for example, and I was just thinking about it as he was talking, I think my social media bio, and I didn't even think about it when I was writing it, but now I'm thinking about it and I see it makes some sense, because how I introduce myself on my bio, I say, a committed follower of the Lord Jesus Christ. So that speaks to my beliefs. I am a Christian. And then there's a slash, a devoted husband and father. That speaks to my conviction about family. So if you read my bio, you'll see that I am a believer, I'm born again, I love the Lord, I'm committed to my walk, but I'm also a husband and a father. Speaks of my convictions and values for family. Then you'll see another slash, and then I said youth and teens worker. Speaks of my vocation, what I am called to do. And I think it's a nice build-up, and then you'll see another slash, and I will talk about a podcaster. It speaks of my talents and giftings. And you'll keep on going, and you will see other things that are now more, how do I call them? Vitu zingine sasa za udunia. Like sports, vocation, traveling, all these things. But it's a nice progression. So wherever I am, I will always be a follower of Christ. Wherever I am, I always have family values. And those things define everything about what I do and how I carry out myself. And I think we need to start there as we work outside, so that we don't fall into the trap. Because one of the things that gives a lot of young people pressures is the question, so what do you do? So, what's your name and what do you do? And when somebody asks you that, it immediately sends you into a frenzy. And part of the biggest problem I had with becoming a pastor is actually telling people that I'm a pastor. Because I don't think it's cool enough, and I think pastors struggle financially, and their life is just a life of faith. They can't plan. So I found it a struggle, and so people would ask me, what do you do? I say, so I work with young people. We specialize in mentorship and capacity building, but really just say you're a pastor. You're a minister of the gospel. And why was I feeling that way? Because I'm carrying the pressure off. When my colleagues are talking about what they do, their achievements and accomplishes, I also need something big. I need to say something that will shake the world. And if there's anything that I think God has really shaken for me within the last 2 or 3 years, is actually my metrics for what a successful life looks like. Wow. That has been a major shift, which I'm still going through.
A round of applause for Pastor Cole. I want to ask the audience this 4 questions, and perhaps we can have someone move the mic around, and then you will give the answers after we are done with the panel. Number 1, what do you do when you feel lost in your 20s? Question 1, what do you do when you feel lost in your 20s? Question number 2, how do you recover after failing publicly? Okay. Question number 3, how do you balance faith, ambition, and mental health? And how do you know when to rest and when to push harder? Those 4 questions, we will answer those questions as we go ahead with the panel. Pastor Hope, if there's a term that I've heard being flaunted around, and I doubt if we really know the meaning of it as young people, is emotional intelligence. You will hear, that guy is not emotionally intelligent. She's not emotionally intelligent. Imagine Hayuko emotionally intelligent. What is emotional intelligence? But secondly, because you deal with relationships, how important is it in a relationship? For someone who has come to this summit and does not know what emotional intelligence is, what is it? And how important is it to relationships, even as young people?
Thank you, Moses. I would actually like to applaud the young people for knowing that word. I came across it when I was already married. That tells you there had been disaster. And maybe that's why I'm so passionate about it. I've written that in my book. So emotional intelligence is basically, it's not about hiding your emotions. And I must start that because sometimes we think emotions are bad. Everything God created was perfect, including our emotions. They are actually a way of communicating. They are an intelligence system, if we can say that. Because imagine if we came here and we were all blank. No one is showing any emotion, poker face, if you can say that. No sadness, no joy, no excitement, no anger. It would be very hard to relate. So I think we first have to acknowledge that emotions are very important. They communicate to you, they help you understand some things. And what now you do, emotional intelligence helps us to be able to be in charge so that your emotions are not the ones controlling or leading you. So it's about understanding your own emotions and being able to manage them and understanding the emotions of others so that you're also able to understand them and know how to handle their situations. There are many facets of emotional intelligence, but the first one is about you. Because there's no way you can understand others unless you understand yourself. So understanding your emotions, what triggers you, what makes you react in a certain way, that is self-awareness. So being aware of who you are, what makes you happy, what makes you angry, what causes you to do things a certain way. So it is very important to be able to track your emotions and what causes them. Then the other one is now being able to regulate those emotions. It is, okay, you're angry, your boss has made you angry. How do you react? Because the instinct when you're angry is to lash out or to walk away, to storm out. Is that what you do? Of course not. So intelligence means you need to be able to regulate yourself, calm down, and there are ways to do that. You calm yourself down, maybe take a minute, say, excuse me, give me 5 minutes, depending on the situation. Calm yourself down, breathe in and breathe out. And then when you're calm, you can now do what you need to do. And I'll pause and ask, is there anyone here, by a show of hand, who has been guilty? I know you see the others who are not emotionally intelligent. Have you ever been guilty of sending a text you shouldn't have sent, making a call you shouldn't have made? Yeah? By a show of hand? Good. You're in good company. I've done it too. Usijali, siwe peke yako. And so, because of that, we ruin relationships. When we react in anger, when we react because somebody has triggered me, as long as you're on this earth, you will always be triggered by people. People will do things that will make you angry, will make you sad, will make you feel a certain way. Your work is not to respond. You deal with you first, yeah? Because you don't want to cost yourself opportunities, relationships, even jobs. You can you imagine your career, losing your career because of a decision that you shouldn't have made, because of an email that you shouldn't have sent. Yeah. So understanding them, regulating them, and also in all relationships actually, emotional intelligence is important, including the romantic relationships. And because I said I learned about it when I was married, at the beginning of our marriage, I am a feeler, I'm an emotional person. I know women, we all are, but we are different. So for me, every time something would happen, I would react, and I couldn't wait to deal with it. I would be burning to handle it until I learned that that was not the right way to do it. Learning to read the room. Like now for me as a married woman, I don't start talking to my husband about an issue when he walks through the door. Sitting down, understanding, and also for you with your bosses, soma mood yake so that you don't go with, you want a pay rise and you're going when he's dealing with pay slips. So reading, understanding the situation, it's called reading the room when you're speaking to people, understanding how their reaction, what are their emotions, so that you don't say things that could have worked, but because you say them at the wrong time, then they don't end up working. So all those things are important. Managing your emotions is so important because I used to use terms when I was single. I'm getting it off my chest. I'm speaking my mind. And I used to think actually it's the right thing to do. But no, you don't have to say everything that comes to your mind. Weigh everything. Some things you just meza mate. Even if someone is making you angry. Because you can ruin relationships because of that. Relationships that could have propelled your future. Don't do that because of... And again, emotional intelligence, I must say, is a skill that can be learned. If I learned it when I was already married, that means you have a good chance of learning it early. It's something that you have to keep growing in it. It is not a personality trait. You have to work on it. The same way with other skills that we need, they have to be worked on. Yeah, so be intentional about becoming that person who doesn't just lash out, doesn't just say everything that comes to their mind. And then also understanding other people, being empathetic. I feel that is something that is lacking in our society today because empathy is part of emotional intelligence. We are so quick to judge people before we even hear their story. Get to understand why someone is doing something before you judge them, before you condemn them, So yes, empathy, social awareness, that means understanding other people's emotions, and social management, managing your emotions and also the emotions of other people. It is very key.
A round of applause for Pastor Hope. Pastor Angie, if you look, most of us have social media, and we have a tendency to follow the who's who in business. And one narrative that is very common among the who's who in business is burnout is the price of success. And I heard someone say, if you want to be successful, forget about work-life balance. Is it true? And where do we draw the balance, the line between pushing harder and resting? Yeah.
All right. I'm sure that quote, burnout is the price?
Of success.
Of success. Good thing is that it's not in the Bible, so we don't have to take it as gospel truth. Bwana asifiwe. Now, there are some things that become normalized because of the way that we pursue them or the way that we do those particular things. Doesn't mean necessarily that they're right way, doesn't mean they're the only way of doing them. When I see the greatest founder, creator, empire ever built was this universe, God did it, and he rested. Bwana asifiwe, can you clock it? He rested. The God is the who is who of all who is who, and he rested. It is a priority for God. It was a model he gave to us. And so it should be our priority. It should be the way that we operate. So I think we'll start that as a foundation. That if you go into it believing that I have to be burnt out, then your body, the whole thing of burnout, excess fatigue, now you fall sick. Because the implications of burnout, you fall sick, you have ulcers, you now have to miss work. There's a ripple effect. God has put those things in place for us. They're signals for our body. Yeah. When I'm starting to have just endless migraines, like it's not supposed to be, hey, let me get a stronger painkiller, or no, it's just this season of building. It's supposed to be, no, there's something my body is telling me. that I need to slow down, right? But if I have believed that this burnout is normal, it's the way of life, then I will not take the cues and the signals that God has given me to be able to regulate. Yeah. So number one, putting down that lie. Don't just believe just because this is what people are doing that it's the truth. It's not the truth. God said rest. Take this Sabbath day, whether it's you take it as a Sunday, you take it on Monday, whichever day, regularly put in periods and seasons of rest. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd say is also that we are not, there are many people, that would be my third point, but my second thing is there are many people who have built over years and not gotten to enjoy what it is they have built because they have burnt out their bodies, they have burnt out relationships, they have burnt out their family dynamics. How many people do you know who have built empires? They have no relationship with their wives, with their children, with their husbands, for example. They have literally, because if you're so obsessed with this success, you will bulldoze people. People who build things, you know that you become a different kind of person. You sort of become almost, you bulldoze everyone to get to this particular outcome. And so now you get to the other side, you're successful, you have no one to enjoy it with. Your health is failing you. You have no time. The things you are building it for, you have lost that opportunity. And so in as much as people say that, the reality is if we look at statistics, we look at numbers, we look at people who have lived their lives that way, very few of them have enjoyed that success. Very few of them have lived long enough even to eat the fruit of their labor, which is what the promise of God is, that we will be able to eat the fruit of our labor. And then lastly, the other thing I would say is that if it is costing you time where you can be able to rest and rebuild, you need to go back to God for a different plan, a different game plan, a different order. You're missing church, you're missing times of fellowship, you're missing time where you can just reflect. One of the things we have lost a lot nowadays in this day and age is time to just be quiet, alone with our thoughts, to reflect. How much of what you like or want or do is based on what you are actually wanting to do? But because the voice of the world is so loud, you're always online, you're always watching something, you're always scrolling, you're always listening to something as somebody else's idea, because your mind never rests. There's no quiet time, leave alone quiet time of studying the word. There's just no quiet for God to speak to you, for you to just recalibrate. So if you don't have times for that, it is unhealthy and it's not going to get you very far. Eventually, utachoka tu. You will just feel like, okay, but why? Why? Well, that's why you have very many successful people who unfortunately take their own lives in different spheres of society. So rest is important. Modeled by God, instructed by God. God desires for us to enjoy the thing and the season we're in. Even if the rest looks like broken down into a day or a full day or full periods, rest is important. Yeah.
A round of applause for Pastor Angie. Precious call. Most young people, in a research done, highlighted their work environment as the primary cause for their poor mental health. And as we move along in the years, as the years come, the more conversations about mental health are becoming common. Why do you think it's that way? And as a pastor dealing with young people, what do you think is the solution? And perhaps you can address this last question. If I see we don't have time. Most young people in church fear coming out as, addressing challenges in mental health because of they will be seen that they are weak in faith. How do we change this trajectory, especially in church environments? So I'll do a recap. Why do you think mental health conversations are becoming more common? What do you think is the solution? And how do we encourage the young people to come out if you're facing, if you have issues with mental health, how can we encourage them to come? And just as a pastor, how do we change the trajectory?
Thank you. I think we can say that of our workplaces because fair enough, if we are to be honest, we actually spend more time at work than at home. And we spend more contact time with our colleagues than the people we live. I was thinking about this earlier in the year. I don't know where I was coming from this particular day, and I was really trying to make it home before the little boy sleeps. But I didn't make it, and I found that he had slept. And so we actually lived with him in the same house. And for like 3 days, we didn't see eye to eye. Because I wake up and leave when he is asleep. And for whatever reason, ministry, visitation, I'm out there late enough. And when I come back home, he's asleep. And it threw me into a place where I didn't like that arrangement at all. And actually, I was asking myself, my son and I live in a girls' dormitory. Like we are the minority leaders. Because there's my wife, who's the mother, then we have our nanny whom we live with, and then my 2 little sisters are many times at home. So we are only 2 men. So I was asking myself, where does this young man get the picture of masculinity from? He's always surrounded by, and there's nothing wrong with that, you see. But it's that you come home and you find that he painted his nails. Where do you get this? The closest masculine image he has is when he goes downstairs and hangs around the gate man. And I found that I spend so much time, for instance, at work, that literally when we come home, we can only sleep. So it makes sense, and that was beside the point, that most of the challenges and probably the weights I go through as a person will come from work. And my wife and I have had this conversation every single time is, can we get to a place where we draw very deliberate boundaries between what we do out there and who we are at home, so that a bad day at work does not have to be a bad day at home? So that if I quarreled with my supervisor at work, I don't have to come and take it out on everybody around me. So that meant that we needed to be very intentional about, number one, tracking our emotions. What am I feeling? For instance, at the place of work. Because if we are numb to that, then we may be nurturing a problem that's going to explode on our faces. And I discovered as a person, and probably this is me being a little bit vulnerable, I have gone through lots of experiences at work that have put me in a very bad place, even emotionally. Sometimes the demand on you is too much, and everybody needs a little of you everywhere. I hope it doesn't sound wrong, but the challenges of being a youth pastor is when the young people are not doing well, it becomes your problem. Sometimes parents to youth and teens come and they sit at the back of your service, listen to what you're preaching, to evaluate you. So that they can say, now I think you can go on, or here is my son, I want you to help me. So it almost becomes your burden, and these things take a little of you everywhere. And sometimes going out on camps with these young people, and you go out there and they wanakusumbua na si watoto wako. And you've left your own people at home, they pay the price for what you have to do. And these things put me in a bad place. And so when I discovered that was happening to me, I grew up in a space where, by and large, I was among those people who used to say, mental health conversations are overrated. You're a spiritual person until it happened to me. You spiritualize things until they become a reality. The same way they say, the noises of an ambulance are a nuisance to you until it's you inside. Or the cries of a madman are entertaining until it's your brother. When it hits closer home, then you have to rethink about it. And so I became very intentional about creating spaces where I can go, and the first thing they see is not pastor, they see Precious. So I have made it easy for me to have access point. I have a person at work that I do talk to every single time, and because they relate with what we are going through, and I'm able to pour out my heart in a safe environment, and I can say things as they are, and I will be guided. I have made intentional efforts to create a community for me. Now, I have a group we're 6 of us, 5 of us actually, young men around the same age, same seasons of life. Both of us are starting off. If I died today, and all of you for some reason decided not to come to my funeral, I know the 4 people who will carry my casket. I can name them for you. If anything would happen to me today that I don't have a job, I know people who will put out things out there to make sure Nadif goes to school. Why? Because we're intentional about creating a community where I can go. If you greet me now and say, how are you? I'll tell you, I'm fine. The Lord is good. if my boys greet me and say, how are you? I'll tell them, bro, ni kunoma. And I'm intentional about creating that space because it is a reality. And as a youth pastor, I have found it worth or beneficial to be open about my struggle, even sometimes to my congregation. So a few times you would come and we would talk. And the day I became vulnerable about talking, not because sometimes, when we preach, the people we preach to, imagine we live in heaven, have breakfast with the angels, and then we come to earth temporarily for assignments. And then we go back to heaven for lunch with the angels and the 24 elders. And I realized that was always a problem with how the youth saw me. And the first time I was open about a struggle I went through, not in the past, but in the recent time as a pastor, it did two things. It established a relationship, but from that moment forward, it opened a door for so many young people to come out and say, I cannot believe that you're going through the same thing I'm going through. Can we talk? And by being vulnerable about some of these things and what we are going through and our experiences, it becomes easier for us to make our churches places of healing. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to pick a mic and say, guys, so yesterday I didn't sleep at home. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying we can be vulnerable about these kinds of conversations. For example, a lot of our young people are going through serious crises, from a mental perspective, a mental health point of view. Do we make them aware of opportunities and doors that we have in our churches where they can come and access or find help? We need to talk about that. We need to make it normal for our young people to know they can actually find help. And sometimes, by the way, I've realized people don't so much need solutions from you. They need a listening ear. 90% of the times when I sit with people, I don't even have solutions. It's this like, wow, hey. And they finish talking, you put your hand around their shoulder and say, I feel you, I hear you. I don't have solutions, but let's pray about this. And somebody leaves feeling like the weight of the world has been lifted from them. We can create. I'm not asking us to find those spaces or those people, but I'm asking you to be that person. If you become that person to someone else and someone else is that person to someone else, we will make our churches, our communities, our Bible study groups, our friendships, places of healing.
Pastor Hope, I want us to tackle health, but in a different perspective, emotional health. How do we go about it as young people? What should we know? How do I become well emotionally if I'm not okay? And as pertains to mental health, what Pastor Precious has said, what are the measures we should take as young people just to protect ourselves emotionally, just to have overall good emotional health? What would you advise?
What I would advise is don't be afraid of being alone. And like Pastor Angie has alluded to, these gadgets are really taking a lot of time that we would have been spending understanding who we are. We are finding ways of masking, numbing, and avoiding dealing with things, hoping that they will just vanish or go away. And emotional wounds or emotional issues are those issues that you cannot avoid. One day they will show up when they are bigger. Yeah. And these are things sometimes they start even from a young age, from childhood. Our upbringing affects or impacts a lot of what we go through in terms of our emotional well-being. How we grew up. If we grew up, and I remember there's a pastor who once said that for anyone who grew in an average African home needs healing. I don't know how true that is. But yeah, it is true, exactly. Because those of us who are raising our children now, we feel so blessed because we are more aware. We understand how we should do things that some generations past, they really didn't know. So children were raised unagongwa na kuchapwa and being told, why are you stupid and all those things. And maybe there's some of you here who went through that, or you are abandoned, or your parents were always at work and never saw you. You were raised by your nanny, or you were taken to shags to be raised by your grandmother. And they thought that was a good thing. But there is some abandonment that comes from that. And rejection. Some people were raised by their relatives and they went through a lot of rejection. Even past relationships. I know some of you here, maybe you have dated and you dated somebody who gave you character development that went into your emotions. And so we need to unpack. There are different ways you can do that. If you can get a therapist, if you can do prayer, if you can get someone you can trust who is a mentor to talk to, but I beg you, don't. Because I know as a married person, there are things that you can run away when you're single. They will wait for you when you get married. That's where they show up. And they show up when they are mountains. So be careful about your emotional well-being. Don't try to hide things. If you go through a situation, and some of them are situations you went through, maybe you're young. Some are very sensitive. Maybe you went through abuse. Some people even went through rape. And because of the shame that is associated with it, you never talk to anybody. And you hid it because you feel like you're responsible. You feel like part of you is telling you, no, I brought it on myself. Those are things that you need to find people that you can trust to talk to so that you can go through healing. It is a journey that you will need to go through healing. I remember I went through emotional healing in marriage. And let me tell you, if you don't have a supportive spouse, it can be hard. So, okay. Yeah, I got soundtrack for that. Yeah, so make sure you deal with them now. They're so important because they will affect every aspect of your being. If you don't heal your emotional wounds or trauma that you went through, it will impact how you do everything. How you are as a business person, if you're in business, how you are as an employee, even the mental health that we're talking about. Everything about us is interconnected. So if you're not well emotionally, it will impact your work. It will impact your family life. It will impact your social life. So it will affect every area, and that's why it is important that if you've been pushing things under sweeping them under the carpet, thinking it's not that big, it's not a big deal, it is a big deal. Make sure you go through healing. Some will need even deliverance. So you may need ministerial help with your pastors so that they can be able to pray over you. Yeah.
Pastor Angie, in a minute or so, in a minute or so, how do we as young Christians remain healthy and effective in toxic and highly competitive environments? Because they are there, without losing ourselves spiritually and emotionally as well. How do we remain effective in just a minute or so?
All right. I think the thing that comes to mind first is asking God about why you're there in that particular workplace. Many times we engage with our work as if our work is bigger, is a separate thing, and then our spirituality is a separate thing. But the reality is, as Pastor Cole said, is that we live out of who we are. It's what we are inside first. So if you're an influencer, you're a Christian first, and then you're an influencer. You are a child of God first, and then you are a teacher. Then you are a media person, a photographer, a speaker, whatever it is. And so your identity in Christ needs to be first, and you don't leave it outside, you don't leave it at home before you go to the workplace. It's the first thing. So the work you're going to do is an expression of the good works that we talked about that God prepared for you. And so even as you go to your workplace, whether it is toxic ya ukweli ama toxic ya kubandika, because we can debate that, is asking God, in this workplace, you have me here now. What do you want me to do here and now? And asking God so that every day he's helping you. One, you execute what you have been hired to do. Because sometimes the toxicity and the experience in our workplaces is even worse because we're not doing the right thing. You're cutting corners, you're shortchanging your boss, you are not delivering excellently. Let your good deeds so be seen by the world, and they will give glory to the Father. So let there be nothing about the work that you have been employed to do that is questionable. That's the first thing. Then secondly, Pray for your colleagues. Pray for your bosses. Pray for the people that you're working with. Some of us, people even, they'll share, this weekend this happened. You never consider this is a prayer request or a prayer moment. Sometimes you can even ask somebody, can I pray for you? Very few people, especially in Africa, will ever refuse prayers unless they see that your ways are a bit shady. But usually people will accept. But even if they don't accept, or even if they don't tell you, if you don't have that conversation, pray for your workplace. I remember when God told the Jews, pray for the leaders in the nations who will take you, you'll go into captivity, so that if they prosper, you also will prosper. So pray for your boss, pray for your colleagues, pray for the people who sit next to you. You don't know what's going on in their homes. By the time somebody is coming to yell at you, somebody is coming to act whichever way, there could be issues in their homes that are the ones that are spilling over to where you are. Pray for them. Pray for their salvation, but pray for their homes, pray for all of that. Some people, you also have to pray into promotions elsewhere because they are not working well in the environment you're in. Pray those ones. Don't pray like James and John. They were saying they wanted to call down fire, and Jesus told them, chill. So don't pray those kinds of prayer. Don't say, fire of God hit my boss. Fire of God hit who? Pray for them to find other places to occupy well in those other places, as God does. But don't try and deal with the toxicity apart from God. God is the one who has put you there. He has an assignment for you. Do the primary assignment, which is the job you're being paid for, but then also do the spiritual assignment that God has sent you there. Because even when you're suffering and all those different things, God sees and God is there. I think it's in 1 Peter, it says, there is no glory if you are being punished for doing the wrong thing. So if you are being victimized because mulipatwa mkifanya kitu mbaya, that's not suffering. It is that you have rightly deserved it. But if you're doing the right thing, it will speak to more in terms of your faith, and you're able to have a greater witness there.
I'm already in trouble with the time team. But just in two words, Pastor Precious Call, Pastor Hope, and Pastor Angie. If the young professionals today were to remember one thing, just one thing from today's summit from you, what would it be? Just in a few words, maybe in 10 seconds, what would it be? Pastor Precious Call.
If the purpose of a thing or a person is not clarified, then abuse is inevitable.
Kuna watu wanasema repeat? Okay.
If the purpose for a thing or a person is not defined, then abuse is inevitable.
Wow. A round of applause for Pastor Precious. Pastor Hope.
For me, I will say that God is concerned about your emotional well-being as He is about everything else. And I will quote this scripture that says that, it's Paul was saying, I desire above all that you may prosper and be in health, even as your souls prosper. So it's not just about the outward. He's concerned about our inward. So as you're building career, business, building yourself outwardly, make sure you don't neglect who you are. The internal system should also be growing together in alignment.
Thank you, Pastor Hope. Pastor Angie.
Maybe I'll leave you with, make sure that you're building what will last for this life and the next. Whichever career you're in, whichever space you're in, remember that there is more than just the present. And you want to be partnering with God to do the work that will matter for all eternity, wherever you are.
Thank you, Pastor Angie. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our time for the panel today. As the panelists go down one by one, I want us to give them a huge round of applause, starting with Pastor Precious Call, Pastor Hope, and Pastor Angie.